Hello, welcome to another episode of Inside the Huddle. Today is Sunday, August 25th, a little late night episode. So by the time many of you are watching this, it'll probably be Monday. But either way, it is episode 26 of Inside the Huddle. Make sure to please like and subscribe. Appreciate all of your support as always. We've got a lot to discuss today on the podcast. Preseason has come and gone, 3 weeks in the books, and now 1 week off before football back on the television a week from this Thursday, right? Yeah, just a week from this Thursday. Cannot wait. Going to be really, really awesome to kick off the season. And preseason's gone now. It's like reality kind of sets in. Football season's here. Rosters are pretty much set. Cut down deadline is Tuesday. Then once everybody's down to 53, that's who you're working with. And we'll see what happens from there on out. DiMari, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It was a great weekend to start. We got some college football back.
Yes.
My weekend was set with Georgia Tech
Yeah.
beating beating Florida State, but yeah, preseason is wrapping up. I mean, last game is being played right now. We got the Patriots and we got Washington kind of going. So after tonight, like you said, Tuesday's rosters begin to cut down, and it's time to prep for week one. So a week from Thursday will be regular season. We get some starters finally in a meaningful game. So, yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. You'll get, of course, Baltimore, Kansas City to open things up at Arrowhead. And then you also have that Friday matchup, Green Bay, Philly in Brazil. So, little double dose of football there. I mean, it's going to be awesome. Next weekend's going to be awesome because you'll have Thursday, uh, Chiefs, Ravens, Friday, Packers, Eagles, Saturday, full day of college football, Sunday, first full Sunday, I should say, of NFL. And of course, Monday, you got Jets, Niners to close things out. So it's going to be an awesome first weekend. And it'll be, of course, a great 17 weeks, as it always is in the NFL. But we've still got some things to discuss here as we close out the preseason before next week, which will be our big kind of season preview show with our division predictions and all that good stuff. So that'll be next week. But we've got some quarterback stuff to discuss here right out of the jump. We'll get into some games and some performances around the league as well from preseason week 3. We'll discuss Bo Nix being named the starter and a couple other things later on. But we'll start here in Pittsburgh with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who finished up their preseason yesterday with a win over the Detroit, or a loss rather, over the Detroit Lions. They were leading early in the game, ended up losing. So they finished 0-3 in the preseason. Not exactly a strong preseason for them. Mike Tomlin said quarterback competition still needs to see a little bit more. They'll make a decision at the end of this week. It does most likely probably seem like it'll be Russell Wilson, but between Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, we will find out who is under center week 1 when Pittsburgh travels to Atlanta to open up the season, or Mike Tomlin could honestly throw a curveball and we'll see a Kyle Allen under center, but I don't foresee that happening. Either way, Russ or Justin Fields, what was your thoughts on, just to open up before we take a little bit of a deeper dive into the quarterback and the Steelers as a whole, on this whole quarterback competition and how it's going to end?
I think it's gonna go Russ. I mean, they brought him over for a reason. I don't think they brought him over for a backup role, especially kind of with his resume. I know Russ hasn't been the same, and Denver kind of really hurt his image, of his play. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think Russ still has a decent amount in the tank, and I know we kind of say this all the time, where you can go to a new team, get a fresh start, and like a whole completely different player. So hopefully for Russ, he can kind of wash that time in Denver, wash that away, focus on Pittsburgh, and they're going to need him. I mean, they are playing in the hardest division in football. Those defenses are amazing. So they're going to need the best of Russ, and I think he's going to be good enough to keep them afloat. I'm not going to really say competitive and kind of just go more into that. They really remind me of like the Iowa Hawkeyes, kind of ironic with the same color scheme,
Yeah.
amazing defense, terrible offense. But I just think Russ needs to just stay afloat and keep them in games. Don't turn the ball over. Don't do too much. And I think they'll be all right. But other than that, I think this is the right decision to go with Russ, just kind of fill it out, get some things going. And if they want to use Fields, maybe use some packages to use his running ability. But looks like he will be the week 1 starter, and he'll get a chance to prove himself against Atlanta.
Yeah, I agree. You're not gonna, even though it's of course only a 1 year deal, and what is it? I always forget the exact number, but what is it? 48 million or whatever it
Yeah,
is Denver's paying it.
something around there.
I think Pittsburgh's only paying like 2 million or something of his contract, so it's essentially like a 1 year deal, 2 million for Russ. But either way, you're not going to bring in a guy like that with, of course, a very impressive pedigree, Super Bowl champion. Even though he's not the same player he once was, you're not going to bring him in to sit the bench behind Justin Fields, a guy who is could probably use, if we're being honest, new team, new environment, could probably use a little time off, maybe a year off after what was a rocky 3 years in Chicago, which ultimately ended in, of course, him being traded in and them going out and drafting another quarterback with the first overall pick just 3 years after they drafted him, or 4 years really after they drafted him. So I think Russ will start. I think it, like we said, trending in that direction. And yeah, I mean, you look at the Steelers, I'll be honest. I always kind of feel for a little bit Mike Tomlin, and it makes what he's done so impressive because, like you said, with them, keeping them competitive and keeping them afloat, Russ should be able to do that. But it's crazy. I still find it crazy where this team has been the last 2 years with the quarterback play they've had, the quarterback play that Mike Tomlin has had to dealt with, and they've still managed to remain competitive, still managed to keep their head above water, and got to the playoffs last year. So I expect that they'll be right back in that conversation. But it's I wonder when the time will come for Pittsburgh where they have a legitimate stud at quarterback post Big Ben, I guess. And I know it's only been 2 years. They had Big Ben all those years. But the last 2 seasons and even going into this year, the expectation, I guess, for the Steelers is, just stay competitive, keep your head above water, don't make any stupid mistakes, all that stuff. Like you wonder at some point, when are they going to invest a big, I don't know, I don't want to say draft capital, but invest something big into the quarterback position as opposed to trying to just stay afloat with the quarterback position and just hoping that Mike Tomlin and this defense can keep I guess you get what I'm saying there. It's like, I don't
Yeah,
know. It's just, it's interesting with, here we are again talking about the Steelers quarterback. And I like Russ. I like the addition, but I really don't know what to expect from them again this year. Like, I know they're going to be 9-10 wins, but I don't know if there can be any better than that. And that's what's interesting. Like you bring up with, they're in such a tough division. I Steelers they're just a weird team for me. I was much higher on the Steelers, I guess, going into training camp in the preseason than I am coming out. The quarterback situation just is, I don't know. Like I don't. It's interesting.
I mean, if we're being honest, this actually goes further than 2 years. I mean, we can go back to 2020 when we kind of brushed that season under the rug, but they were 11 and
Yeah.
0 with Big Ben
Yeah.
not looking good whatsoever, and they kind of got exposed for it. So it's been some time for Pittsburgh, but
Yeah.
kind of like a bunch of different angles. I look at the whole situation with Pittsburgh, and there's like what they're going to do with their quarterbacks. The first thing is I think that is kind of like a Pittsburgh thing. I mean, they've known for like the Steel City,
Yeah.
like they're
Yep.
known for toughness, competitiveness, and just being
It's
good
never
and being
pretty. Yeah.
dominant. Exactly. So I think for them, it's kind of one of those things where I don't want to say pride, but it almost seems like pride. It was like, look, we're not about to go and win 2, 3, 4 games to go get you know, a high draft pick for a quarterback. Like, no, we're going to try to make the
Yeah.
playoffs every single game. And I know a lot of teams say that, but you can kind of tell when some teams are tanking and when other teams are trying to genuinely be competitive. And they're one of those teams. They want to always make the playoffs. They want to always attempt to win the division. So I think one side of it's like, no, we're going to go out and win as many games as we can, and we'll figure it out. And the other part of it is it kind of their situation really, I'm going to tie this into Dallas, but not go much into Dallas. Their situation really reminds me of why it's not easy and why I continue to tell people you can't just let a quarterback walk and think you can just replace them easily and they're going to come in, win division titles, get you to divisional round, get you to the conference championship. Because that's not the case. I mean, we've been through, for Pittsburgh, we've been through Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, they had very high expectations with neither one of them even being on the roster no more. Like they were brought in to be the franchise guy. Mitch Trubisky, like there's so many guys that Pittsburgh has continuously brought in to be the answer, and none of them has been the answer. So it's not as easy as it sounds. Where in Pickett's case, a first round guy, where he's
Yeah.
just like, okay, well he's so good in college, let's go get him. He's going to instantly come in and he's going to kind of change the culture. It doesn't work like that. Just because you're college good does not mean you are NFL good. Not gonna throw any names out there, but we see it every Sunday.
Yeah.
And we see guys at the end of every year that was so good in college, they get in the NFL, and they're not the same player. So for Pittsburgh's case, I mean, I don't know. And I guess you can ask yourself, you in this case, Pittsburgh in this case, who else can they bring in? I mean,
Yeah.
unless at this point you're not getting a Herbert, you're not getting a Lamar Jackson, you're not getting a Patrick Mahomes. So what can you do? Who can you go get? The options are very limited.
Yeah. No, yeah, and I agree. And I'm glad you brought up the rookie stuff because look, Russell Wilson is maybe he's not on the level, of course, of Lamar or Burrow or those guys in his division. And, of course, the Patriots, like you said, aren't going to go out and get a Lamar. They're not going to get a Herbert right now. Maybe something like that happens down the road where they strike a big blockbuster trade. But as of now, of course, none of that is going to happen. Russell Wilson is an upgrade, though. How big, we'll see. But he is an upgrade over what they've had. I mean, it's the Steelers. I've always kind of said it a little bit different, but the Steelers and the Jets, I would say over the last 2 years have had kind of similar seasons in a way where quarterback has been a major problem. You have a star receiver, whether it's George Pickens or Garrett Wilson, who are putting up huge numbers with no quarterback. You're in the hunt, but the Steelers have actually gone to the playoff. Jets couldn't, of course, finish, and a really good defense. Terrible quarterback, really good defense, and a couple players on offense that can do some damage. That's been the Steelers. I broke down the numbers earlier today. The last 2 years, this is what they've gotten out of their quarterbacks: 25 touchdown passes and 23 interceptions in the last 34 regular season games. And of course, those quarterbacks were Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky. They've tried a couple different things. Pickett, like you said, was the high draft pick. He played at Pitt. He was at their facility. Of course, the college NFL team share facility was kind of like almost like a minor league thing where he was coming up the farm system, already knew the city, already knew what it took to succeed there. Cool story, all that stuff. That didn't work out. So, this is a team that has thrown, and this is the positive angle on it. This is a team that has thrown 25 touchdowns in the last 2 years. Russell Wilson last year threw 26 touchdowns in 15 games. If Russell Wilson goes out there, and I guess that's where I'll ask you this question as well, is what would be, I guess, what is your, and we'll go into the whole division predictions next week, so I don't want to spoil it too much, but what is your ceiling for the Steelers with Russ? If Russ goes out there and throws 26 touchdowns again, this was a team last year that won 10 games with essentially no quarterback play. Mitch Trubisky, Rudolph, all those guys, like Kenny Pickett. Can they get, that's where, can they get to, if Russ throws 26 touchdowns, do they get to 11? But then again, you look at how it ended. It's very, I don't know. I really don't know what to expect from Pittsburgh.
I don't see it happening. Look at the three in the division kind of as it is. And then you get Atlanta on the schedule. You get Philly on the schedule. You get Dallas on the schedule. So it's not it's not easy. And I mean, like I was just saying, this is not the same Russ that you used to have to fear in 2015. And as good as Pittsburgh's defense is, I mean, teams in their division have just as good or better defenses. Dallas has a just as good or better defense. Philly's defense isn't great, but they can do enough. They've upgraded enough. I think will keep them in games. So I don't think it's going to be one of those situations for Pittsburgh anymore where 17 points wins you a game, because great offenses. Now, on the other side of it, great offenses that they play, like a Dallas, like a Philly, Cincinnati, Baltimore, they're going to figure out how to eventually score enough points to win a game. They're going to be able to get you 23. So they can, if your offense can't match up, it doesn't matter how good your defense is, because you're not going to be able to stay in games, and your defense can only hold it down for so long. And I know their defense won them a lot of games last year, but I don't think 26 touchdowns from Russ is going to do it this year. I hate to say it, but they're going to need like 30, 32 with
Yeah.
maybe around 8, 9 interceptions. Like that's the type of year they're going to need in that division.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. And if not, you're probably looking at maybe an 8-9 win team, because I don't think they would. I don't think they're any worse than that. Um, it feels like maybe 10 to like 8 to 10 wins is probably somewhere where they're at. But yeah, you make a good point about, you look at some of the offenses, of course, who they've got to play. And I will say this for Pittsburgh, their schedule is not easy at all. It is a very, very difficult schedule. And a lot of it is because, well, they've got to play the AFC North. That's most of it. But you just look at after their bye week, their schedule after the bye is absolutely brutal. So they get Washington out of the bye, which is fine. You should beat them. But then it's Baltimore at home, then Cleveland, Cincy on the road, Cleveland again, then on the road in Philly, on the road in Baltimore, and then you close out with Kansas City and Cincy at home. That is brutal to end the season. So it feels like for Pittsburgh, and it will, is it a short leash, you think, for Russ? Because it feels like for Pittsburgh, if early in the season they're struggling and they're, I don't know, after, they're maybe even 4-4, let's say, going to, maybe that's a stretch, but if they're like 3-5, maybe going to the bye, do they make a change? Because then you'd be looking at a stretch there where you essentially have to play you've got to play Cleveland twice, and you got to play Cincy twice. They don't play those two, and Baltimore twice. They don't play their division until the second half of the season. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what happens. But I don't know. I mean, the Steelers are, and they do have Arthur Smith, of course. They brought him in from Atlanta. He's an upgrade over what they've had, or should be an upgrade over what they've had at offensive coordinator the last couple years. Of course, last year, the midseason change there. You do wonder is it a concern at all that Russ really hasn't pulled away from Justin Fields? But maybe I'm reading into it too much. But the Steelers are just a very interesting team going into this season, and a quarterback competition that isn't exactly the most exciting, I guess, if that makes sense, between a guy that's kind of a reclamation project and a guy that is just got ran out of Denver, who is now starting Bo Nix. But that's, I guess, for another day. Anyway, that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's their quarterback situation. Russell Wilson looks like he'll win the job, and will be a very interesting season from them. Now I move on here to some other notes around the NFL. We'll go to Denver here. We'll go to Denver. We'll go to Bo Nix starting. Not really too much of a surprise, I would say. This is a guy that so far this preseason, or in the preseason, didn't play today, but in the preseason went 23-30, had a 76.7% completion percentage, 205 yards, 6.8 yards per completion, 2 touchdowns, no picks, passer rating of 116.7. So put together what was a nice preseason. The Broncos went 3-0 with defeating the Cardinals today. What was your reaction to the news Bo Nix will be under center for week 1 in Denver?
It's not a surprise. We've known it for quite some time, and the competition wasn't really much of a competition. I feel like he wasn't up against much when it came to kind of his situation, but they obviously wasn't come like out right after the draft and be like, all right, well, here's the keys, team is yours, do what you do. But I think it's gonna be, I don't want to say it's gonna be fun to watch, and there's gonna be nothing fun about watching the Denver Broncos this year, but he's going to be an interesting watch just to kind of see how, his, I think, 6 years in college, how he continues to progress and develop. And I know we've talked about it before, like from his first start at Auburn against Justin Herbert, going, further in his career, and now being in the NFL. I just want to see that development, how far he's come along. So it's going to be interesting to watch. And I mean, maybe we could be talking about a potential Rookie of the Year candidate. You never know. They could surprise some people. He could surprise some people. But we'll see.
Yeah. Hey, Denver's 3-0. They're undefeated. Can't take that away from them. Yeah. I'm interested to see what Bo Nix does. Of course, this guy's a guy with a lot of experience. I think he's got a very high floor. I don't think there's massive bust potential there. Like, I don't think he's going to be awful. How high is his ceiling? That's a good question. A guy with all that college experience should be able to compete at the NFL level. Again, how high of a level? How good will he be? Will he ever be elite status? We'll eventually find out. But yeah, this isn't much of a surprise for Denver, and I just hope that they. I don't know, and I don't get the impression that they won't be, but I hope that they're just patient with Bo Nix in Denver, and they're not going to try and rush his process because, for being honest here, you look at what he's surrounded with. It's not the most ideal. He's not walking into the most ideal situation for a rookie quarterback in terms of the weapons they have. This could be it for Cortland Sutton in Denver. There's probably going to be a lot of moving pieces over the next 2 seasons, which you hope, we'll see how much that affects him. But I'm curious, and I'll ask you this as well. What are your impressions on the rest of the quarterback room? Do they hold on to 3? It seems like they probably will. Zach Wilson, hey, just tearing it up. 250
Uh,
plus yards today, 2 touchdowns. He's
I
watch out.
well, I don't
Comeback
think
player of the
Stidham.
year.
Absolutely not. I don't think Stidham dressed out today. If I'm correct, I think I seen him in street clothes while I was watching the game. So I think he locked up QB2 possibly, but him
Yeah.
not playing doesn't necessarily mean that. I think Zach has looked good enough in the preseason to where he has probably fought for a right to be behind Knicks, like if all goes wrong. But then again, you are playing, third stringers and some guys that are fighting for roster spots. But kind of how we are talking about it off air, where he just looks different. He looks confident. He is still making some pretty bad decisions you probably shouldn't be making going into was it year 4, year 3, making some pretty questionable decisions. But I think I think it can go either way. If I'm Denver, I think you do keep 3 on the roster. And we talked about that off air as well, where, from now until week 1, anybody can get hurt. Like injuries are unpredictable. So the last thing you want to do is cut Zach, and he's learned this system, kind of learned Sean Payton. You cut him, somebody else claim him. One quarterback goes down. Now you're out scrambling on the wire for another quarterback who has to completely come in and learn the system fresh and completely start over. So I think they should just stick with Zach.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think I don't see them cutting him and then somebody picking him up and then having to bring in somebody else. It just doesn't make, like you said, a ton of sense from that perspective. I don't know. Denver, what are we looking at here? 4 or 5 wins, maybe 6 wins. Bo
4-5.
Nix, 4 or 5, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think this news changes a whole lot from Denver's perspective. But you never know. Look, Bo Nix is, like I said, I think he's got a lot of good traits. The processing, I think, has been very, very impressive. It looks like it's only preseason. We totally understand that, but it looks like he's got a good grasp up to this point of the speed of the NFL game, which 5 years of college football will certainly help you catch up to the speed and have with a lot of snaps, a lot of experience playing at 2 major schools, of course, in Auburn and Oregon. So he's seen a lot. We'll see what happens. But Bo Nix starting job in Denver. Not too much of a surprise there. And the rookie signal caller will be under center week 1. All right, let's move on here. We'll go to the Colts. Anthony Richardson struggled a little bit this weekend. Kind of I don't know, I want to say a wake up call or kind of an alarm at all for Colts fans, but a little bit of I don't know how to word it, but I think there's a lot of hype, myself included, a lot of hype going into the season for Anthony Richardson. As a guy that struggled a little bit this weekend, throwing a touchdown, also had a pick, wasn't his best outing. What was your impressions from Anthony Richardson?
If I'm going to be so honest, I don't understand the hype. And I'm a Florida fan. I watched them at Florida,
Yeah.
and I had a lot of Anthony Richardson, I see you. But I also had a lot of Anthony Richardson, I see you. What are you doing? It's I don't know. I think we say this so often. It seems like it's almost every week where a lot of players, especially quarterbacks now, are drafting on the potential of what they can be and not what they are
Yeah.
in the present moment. And out of like coming out of college, I understand that this was a big body guy. I mean, I think he's like 6'4", so tall, big body guy with impressive running ability. And teams looked at that and they are just like, I need it, like I gotta have it. But as a thrower, like Anthony Richardson has not always been the most accurate. So I'm really not understanding the hype around him. And I mean, things can change. And this is not Anthony Richardson slander whatsoever. I do think he is good enough to lead them to at least like the playoffs or be competitive in the divisions. I mean, they barely missed the playoffs last year with Gardner Minshew. So I think he's going to be good, but the hype, I don't know. People are viewing him as like a top 10, top 8. I have heard from my own ears that people think he is up there. Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's interesting. I might have to. I've bought in a lot to the hype this off season, I guess, if that makes sense. Into Anthony Richardson, you go back to the couple games that he played last year prior to the injury, and there was a lot of really positive things. There was a lot of things that you saw. There was like, man, this guy can. He's got all the athleticism, arm looked good, played really well in the games that he was healthy. You want him to protect his body a little bit more, but you'd hope that he learns that. That's something that a lot of times rookies sometimes struggle with. I mean, still to this day, Josh Allen kind of runs around like a wrecking ball, which still doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But I guess different guys, whatever works for them. But in all seriousness, no, I bought in a lot to the Anthony Richardson hype, and I'll be honest. I didn't love Anthony Richardson coming out of college. As a matter of fact, I hated the pick for the Colts. I didn't like it. I didn't see a ton of him at college, and I don't want to sit here and gauge everything off of his stats, but looking at his numbers, he wasn't crazy impressive in my eyes at college, at least. And I know you probably saw him in person, so you have a much better gauge than I do. But I hated the pick for the Colts. And I slowly bought into it after seeing him on the field in the 4 games that he played. The Rams game, of course, was really impressive. The Jacksonville game was really impressive as well. Both games where found the end zone as a runner, of course, 7 total touchdowns to just 1 pick in his first 4 games. A lot of positives, but now it might be takes a little bit of a step back. Teams maybe are going to catch up to him a little bit. So again, it's only 1 preseason start, but maybe it's a reminder, or he did play in the preseason earlier on, but maybe it's a reminder that I guess the hype might need to pump the brakes a little bit on the hype. But it's interesting because now let's just say this. Right, I loved the Houston Texans. We'll go into our season predictions next week, but I am probably maybe one of the highest people on the Houston Texans this season. I think they're going to have a massive year. I'm not buying into this whole sophomore slump thing. I just don't see it happening. I could be wrong. Maybe it does. But forever now, Colts last year with Gardner Minshew got to the last game of the regular season, almost beat the Texans to get to the playoffs. If Anthony Richardson, we've all saying, oh, now they got Anthony Richardson, they're going to win 10, 11 games maybe. They're going to easily finish in second place. They can make a run in the playoffs. If Anthony Richardson, though, isn't the guy that everyone's expecting, then that division is maybe outside of Houston one of the most, I guess, questionable divisions, if that makes sense, in the NFL. Would you tend to agree? Because if the Colts and Anthony Richardson aren't what we all think they are, Jacksonville, I think we both share some. I think we're both kind of on Jacksonville with the way it ended last year. Neither of us and myself, I don't love what Trevor Lawrence has done. I don't know if how much better he can be. I don't know if he can really outplay a Burrow or any of those guys at this point. We'll see. I could be wrong. Tennessee, Will Levis, they've got some good pieces. They're going to miss DeAndre Hopkins a little bit, but Will Levis, what is he? You still have to see another full season of him. Would you say, if that's how things pan out, that this division might be one of the, if craziest is the word that makes sense, most unpredictable outside of
Yeah,
Houston?
it's wide open outside of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely wide open. And I just think, I don't know. I know I've said this before, but the more I watch Tennessee, the more I think they could be one of those teams that are far more impressive than we think they're going to be. But if Richardson if we get from what we're hoping, the Colts should finish second in the division. I think 9, 10 wins, and that's also everyone stays healthy as well. You need a healthy Jonathan Taylor. You just need health throughout. But if Anthony Richardson is not the guy, like you said, and he just makes bad decisions, turns the ball over, those type of things, it's anybody's. Like it's up to grab. I do agree though. We're like Jacksonville's kind of yeah. So when we say up to grab, I think at least in my case, I'm saying Tennessee. When I say up to grabs, I'm not believing in Jacksonville, but again, from the Colts, I mean Richardson missed a lot of time last year, so maybe he kind of set back and learned some things from last year when it comes to the decision making and those type of things. So I guess we won't really be able to see until he takes the field week 1. But if he doesn't figure it out, I mean, it's outside of Houston, anybody can take the division.
Yeah, 100%. It's anybody's game. It feels like, and I don't know. Maybe Richardson again has kind of learned a little bit and has kind of tried to get himself to maybe play a little bit less reckless, try and be, I don't know, maybe a little bit more boring in a way to try and protect himself, if that makes sense. But I guess what was your biggest knock be from what you saw at college and even now in Richardson?
Accuracy, just is oh he he's so fun to watch, especially when
Mm-hmm.
he's scrambling and he's using his legs. I don't know if you remember the Utah play when they played against each other, like pump fake, spin out of a sack, find a receiver in the back end zone. You see that Anthony Richardson, you're just like, all right, this from the coach perspective, this is what we drafted him for. This is the guy that we want. This is the guy we need to be good. But then you see just some of the like short and intermediate accuracy, and you're just like, dude, you are a starting quarterback in the NFL. Like, at what point do you get this down packed? So
Yeah.
it's just those little things, but those are things that can be worked on. And I don't want to completely, like rain on his parade. I do think he's a good quarterback, but he needs a lot of work. Just the simple things leaves a lot of work.
Yeah, and the completion percentage last year was under 60%, which isn't exactly what you want to see from an NFL quarterback, a fourth overall pick, something that obviously needs to be cleaned up. I mean, even in that Rams game, just looking back, 44% completion percentage. He'll have those stretches, like you mentioned, and that's kind of was the story of just his year last year, first 4 games. He had stretches of doing things that you kind of just sit there and be like, wow, this guy's a star. And in like this preseason game, he'll have moments where you're sitting there scratching your head. What did I just say? So it's 50-50. He's got to get those things ironed out. But look, the pieces are in place for the Colts. I really like what the Colts have done with their roster around him. You've got Michael Pittman Jr., of course, has turned into a really, really nice receiver since they selected him a couple years ago out of USC. Josh Downs is a guy that I think is only getting better and hopefully continues to build chemistry with Richardson to be a threat behind Pittman for many years to come as just a year or two wideout. A.D. Mitchell, I loved coming out of Texas. I think he was a really great value pick where they got him in the second round, 52nd overall. I thought he was a borderline first round talent that they got probably 20, 25 picks later than maybe he could have gone. So I really like what they've done, but you got to get consistency out of Richardson or else, whose time it's going to be. Joe Flacco.
I
You
didn't even
can't
know
get
Joe
away from
Flacco
him.
was still on the team until watching the game. I could not
Cannot
believe
you?
my
The
eyes.
NFL cannot get away from Joe Flacco. It can never. Joe Flacco will always be here.
I could not believe that was Joe Flacco on the sideline.
We've got the script. It's going to be the same thing as last year. Anthony Richardson's going to play so bad. Colts are going to be like 1-4. They're going to say, "All right, we're going to sit you down. We're going to bench you. You need some time." Flacco's going to come out. He's going to win. He's going to rattle off like 6 straight. Colts are going to get back in the playoff race. They're going to go like 10-7, get the 7 seed. They'll lose in the wild card round, but Flacco will not, instead of getting off the couch, he'll just get off the bench this time.
Yeah, that's it. At least he's already there. You don't got to fly in or
Yeah, he
anything.
doesn't have to
Just
fly in. Knows the
put a
playbook.
helmet on. Yeah. Exactly.
They won't put him on. He won't be flying he won't be flying like a commercial public flight.
Exactly.
He'll be on the team charter. Crazy, unbelievable. Anyway, that's the Colts. Watch out, Joe Flacco. That's all I'm saying. Heads up. Just watch out. Might bets. I'm hearing from Vegas. Bets are coming in. Joe Flacco MVP.
Maybe. Wow. Joe Flacco really played in the 2012 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
You know
Like
what still to
that
me is
is
one of
crazy.
the craziest aspects of Joe Flacco's career. It's not the fact that he had, played 3 straight years with the Jets and he didn't do anything. Like he did nothing. In 3 years with the Jets, there is other than the one moment against the Browns, he was just the definition of mid. Like he did not provide anything to the Jets and somehow he was here for 3 seasons. But one of the craziest aspects of Joe Flacco's career I still feel to this day is when Denver, remember when he signed with Denver out of Baltimore and they made a big deal out of it. And it was that big contract. They brought him from Denver. They had an introductory press conference with the Denver Broncos. Like, this is a big deal. He was going to finally be the guy that takes over for Peyton. He played 8 games and was out of there. It was funny. I saw a video the other day, 2019 biggest preseason storylines. It just shows you how much the league has changed. And the biggest storyline was Flacco saying how, it's a great environment, loves his new team, feels they're built to win. And he lasted 8 games. He had that neck injury, and that was the end of it. Joe Flacco's stint on the Broncos is still one of the most randomest periods in NFL history. Just so random. Does not make sense. But here we are. It happened.
I mean, that might be the one team with worse quarterback luck than the Jets. Actually, I honestly believe it is 100%.
Them and the Jets have been neck and neck since, being honest, because let's be honest here, the Broncos and the Jets have had a very similar time the last 9 years, whatever. Because you go back to 2015, Broncos won the Super Bowl, Jets had Fitzpatrick that year. That was the last year the Jets had a good quarterback season. And then from there on out, Peyton Manning retired. 2016, they rolled out Simeon and Paxton Lynch, and then Osweiler came into the picture and all that other junk. For the Jets, you had then McCown, Bryce Petty, Hackenberg experiment, who he never even played a down in the NFL. Zach Darnold, don't even need to discuss. Flacco, Mike White, who got released today. Mike White got released.
He did get released today.
Bring him back.
Bring back Mike White.
I want Mike White on the practice squad.
He actually looked competent with that team.
Yeah.
And they was like, we actually don't really need decent quarterback play. We're going to just ship you out of here.
Yeah. Even that. Remember when Mike White had the crazy Mike White game against the Bengals? Then the next week he got hurt against the Colts. He threw the touchdown, then got hurt, and he left the game with an injury. Even that, as a Jet fan, we couldn't even have 2 full games of Mike White. Are you serious? And then he came back the next year and had that big game against the Bears. Yeah, it was the Mike White era was a weird era. It was a lot of fun, but you knew still in the back of your mind that Zach was a bust and things like that. So you really didn't know, but it was a special era. They should have never got rid of him. He should have been the backup last year.
No, yeah, that was.
But I don't even want to. It's not even worth talking about it. He should have been the backup last year. Who even cares? They're gonna regret that. They gave all that money to Tua when Mike White was really the best quarterback on the roster. I'm just saying. They should be cutting Tua, not Mike White.
Dolphin slander.
Getting on Dolphins fans' nerves just in time for the season.
Dolphin slander.
Anyway, let's move on. You want to talk about Trey Lance? Trey Lance time. 5 picks, 1 touchdown, 5 picks. They say he threw a 6th pick. His helmet got picked off on the sidelines.
I mean, what much is there to say? I'm not gonna go on much of a ramble. Just the game spoke for itself, and 5. I don't know. I saw today. The trade package that what the Dolphins got for the Trey Lance trade,
Yeah.
which was Bradley Chubb, I believe, Jalen Waddle, and I can't remember what that third piece was. To look at that and just to think that I don't there's so many directions I can go in right now. Oh my goodness.
I'll say this. It really is crazy. I mean, I'll tell you what. And I'll toss it back over to you in a second, but it's just wild. The whole Trey Lance situation. This is a guy that came out of a small school, North Dakota State, same thing as Wentz. Drafted third overall, trade up for him. And it's a team that has had such weird quarterback luck is the Niners. They haven't really have a quarterback. And yet, like, they've missed on the number. Nobody misses on the number 3 overall pick and then hits on Mr. Irrelevant. That just does not happen. No, like what? What? Here I am. I'm just looking for a playoff game. I just want a home playoff game, and we have the Niners hitting on Mr. Irrelevant. Like, seriously? The whole Trey Lance thing, it just annoys me because it's like if you take a quarterback 3rd overall and he pans out as bad as Trey Lance does, you do not deserve to be right back in the race the next year. Like, and here we are. They find Brock Purdy out of the middle of nowhere.
What makes it so much worse is not only did somehow they missed on the 3rd pick and the last pick in the draft, they found a gem, but also for Trey Lance to not be successful in the 49er system is insane. I can't think of a quarterback when is the last time, not including Trey Lance, has a quarterback in the 49er system not been good? I really can't think of a guy. Like, I can't think off the top of my head. I cannot
out of
think
the
of
Niners,
a guy.
right?
Yes, that has just not been good in the 49er system. So, to my point with Trey Lance, I remember a family member of mine when Dallas traded for Trey Lance looked me dead in my face and said, "Yep, they're going to let Dak walk and they're going to start Trey Lance, and that's the best decision." That's why they brought him over, to get rid of Dak. But this quarterback that you drafted in the 3rd with the 3rd pick, who they shipped out of there, like they even really just shipped him out of there, is playing against 3rd, 4th, 5th stringers in the preseason, and you throw 5 interceptions. Give it benefit of the doubt. One of them was snatched right out of the receiver's hands. So we can say 4, but we're going to say 5 because that is what the statistics say. It says 5. This man threw 5 interceptions in a preseason game at home. I don't know. Just what I can say, that game did show me a little something. For him to throw 5 interceptions and them to still lose by 1 possession says a lot about the defense. The defense is going to be good. But just to my point earlier when we were talking about Pittsburgh, people think like quarterbacks can just come in and just go win 12 games for 3 straight seasons and get you to the playoffs and win divisions. It doesn't work like that. It clearly doesn't work like that. So if they do decide to let Dak walk, well, you might as well call us the Denver Broncos because that is going to be the path that we're on.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think this is actually proving Dak's value probably more than, and I know it's only preseason, it is backups, but to people out there that think, oh, they could just let Dak walk and then bring in or have Trey Lance sit a year or whatever the case may be. I guess the whole conversation about like most valuable player, MVP, and this has nothing to do with the actual MVP award, but when you're actually looking at a player's value, it's tough to sometimes tell his full value when he's actually out there until when he's not out there. And I know it's only preseason, but I mean, it's not even that though. I mean, when Dak missed 2020 is when he got hurt, right? And they had Andy Dalton out there, they finished 6-10 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
During that year. So you saw the impact there with him out. And Andy Dalton's not even a bad backup. I mean, he's a guy that had success in Cincy. I could think of 20 guys that Andy Dalton's a quality backup to have. And I'd take Andy Dalton over a lot of backups right now in the NFL. But That's my point is even when Dak went down and you had a backup that could still play a little bit, has a lot of experience, still didn't work out. And now you're trying this experiment with Trey Lance, which if the Cowboys at all ever thought, oh, he might be the future, then you're wrong because throwing 5 interceptions in a preseason game is about as non-future as it gets, if that makes sense.
And just Trey Lance isn't even going to be the backup. Like he's fighting for the QB3 spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of hate the Cooper Rush thing that he's like 5-1 with Dak not playing. So what
Yeah.
people look at, and I hate to say casuals, but I'm gonna just start calling people casuals because you look at the record and you're just like, oh, okay, 5-1. Like Dallas doesn't need him; they're winning games. But what you're not taking into consideration is while he's 5-1, they're only scoring 17 points while the defense is holding people to under 13 points. So of course it looks good, but back to the argument of about Pittsburgh, where we're saying when you get in those situations where the defense can't stop anybody, I'm going to use Seattle for instance. Last year, Seattle scored 35 points in our defense last year. We scored 41. Cooper Rush isn't going to give you that. Like only Dak Prescott is going to give you that. Those games with Phillies are usually like with Philly, usually shootouts, high scoring games. Cooper Rush isn't, he's not capable. He's going to give you 20 points, 17 maybe. So I don't know why people again think like you can just let Dak walk and just a quarterback is going to walk in that can give you, 30, 35 points a game. And also taking consideration that he was doing it with Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore left. And it was like, oh, okay, well, it was all Kellen Moore. That's why they look good. Mike McCarthy takes over and they still look good. Like there's no drop off whatsoever. So I don't know, just I'm glad it happened, like how Trey Lance, how it all unwrapped. Like, obviously, guys in the NFL, I'm not in the NFL, so I'm not trying to talk down on him, but you can really look and understand, like, he's not the answer. So please stop saying he's the answer.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Cooper Rush, what he does is he goes out there, he manages the game. Cowboys defense, a lot of times it's happened sometimes with defenses in the back of their mind, they know, okay, this quarterback, this offense isn't going to score a ton. We need to really lock it down. I noticed that a lot, and that's something, a common theme sometimes. That I know I might be getting a little off track, but hockey, a lot of times you see defense in front of a backup goaltender is a lot of times a lot stronger than defense in front of a starting goaltender because they know they can get bailed out by starting goaltender. Same thing here in football with, of course, defensively mindset. You might say, oh, if we let up a touchdown to drive, we know Dak can score, but it's the same breath. It's almost like you have to play every possession with a backup quarterback like it's game on the line because Cooper Rush is going to go out there and put up 40 points. I will say, Cooper Rush, in the 48 hours after Rodgers, he was certainly a name I brought up.
He's serviceable. I mean,
yeah, he is.
Cooper Rush with that Jets defense. I think they could have made the playoffs last year.
Yeah,
he is
100%.
Very serviceable, and that is all you need from him. That is all the Jets needed in that situation. So I think that would have been great.
Yeah. No, yeah, there definitely would have been, but obviously they decided to go to the guy that is now in Denver. Anyway, any closing thoughts? Any thoughts as we close out the Trey Lance discussion?
Hope that gets paid before the week. Well, before regular season starts. That's all I got to say about that.
I will say this, though. Going back to the 49ers point, even Nick Mullins. Remember Nick Mullins, his debut against the Raiders, 2018, 3 touchdowns, 262 yards. Nick Mullins looked competent at times in the Niners system.
Like, just
I mean, what are we doing?
Even I can't even I don't know. The first quarterback that comes to mind as a starting point is like Alex Smith, and I feel like there's a blank, and there's like Colin Kaepernick, and then a blank, and then like Trey Lance and whatever, Jimmy G, whoever. But just to my point, like no one has been bad in that system. I can't remember when the last time somebody was absolutely just so terrible in the 49ers system to the point where they were scrambling for a quarterback. Like I don't think it's happened. And for him to not be successful in that system, that's a red flag.
Yeah, 100%. I want one quick question. What are your thoughts on the Guardian caps being worn during games? I'll be honest, and I understand it's safety, but seeing Jonathan Taylor in the Guardian cap is just so goofy to me.
I guess I don't mind it. Like, it doesn't look the best. It does kind of look a little silly, but
Yeah.
for the
Looks like he
safety
got like an
purposes,
alien head.
yeah, like I get it. It blends in a little bit, but like it doesn't blend in at the same time. If it's a close up, like you can tell,
Mhm.
but I don't know. The game is all about player safety. That's why they got this
Yeah.
new technology and they got the new helmets like Pollard, Zeke, those guys wear. And
Oh, like the motorcycle helmets?
yeah,
Yeah.
call them Power Ranger helmets, but
Yeah.
like the Power
Yeah,
Ranger
that's good.
looking
That's good.
helmets.
Yep.
So it's all for safety. But I mean, if this is the way to keep your players on the field and cut down the concussions, I guess I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's whatever's works and whatever players feel comfortable with. That is something I'm interested in, just not really a big storyline, but I am curious how many guys this year would actually wear the Guardian caps. Jonathan Taylor is one of them. I think he's the only one as of now I've seen during the preseason wear them, which probably tells you that there probably won't be many because I feel if guys would wear them, they would try them out in the preseason to see how it feels in
Yeah,
game as opposed to trying it out week one. Um, but I could be wrong. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, those helmets with the Power Ranger helmets, those are interesting. They just I've it's just a new technology. Soon everybody will be wearing those. It's almost like when the Speed Flexes came out a little while ago. Those were the big things. Now it's the Power Rangers helmets with
yeah,
you get the dark visor on there. You're ready to go.
yeah.
Anyway, next week or any other closing thoughts before we preview our season preview? Next week we preview the preview.
Season's finally here. That's all
Yep.
I can say. I'm happy about that. That is all.
Yes. Very, very exciting season is here. Next week we will have our season preview, and we will also have our first two games to preview because, of course, every weekend. So we'll have a podcast up next week, and then Thursday, Friday games will happen. We'll recap those prior to previewing the rest of week one. So we'll have regular season football we'll have two regular season football games to preview next week, which will be awesome. Can't wait for that. Previewing the preview, essentially. Next week, we'll have our entire season preview. We will give our full division predictions out for every single division. We'll also do some playoff stuff. Might throw some award predictions in there as well. But yeah, next week will be our big 2024 season preview before Thursday night football and then Friday night, of course, in Brazil. So stay tuned for that. That'll be a big episode. Getting ready for the season. Can't wait for that. And yeah, we will talk to you guys then. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, thanks for watching.